Barbara Hannigan, welcome to Q.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, it's nice to see you in person. We've spoken twice on the line.
I know, it's funny.
It is a weird thing. It's a weird part of my job that I sometimes speak relatively intimately with people.
Yeah. And you have no idea. I mean, you might know what I look like, but I didn't know what you look like.
No, by the way, I'm very sorry. By the way, I apologize.
You don't need to apologize.
I'll try and wheel somebody in.
I'm going to make it through the interview. It's not that long.
Okay. It's not that long.
I can stand it.
I can maybe put up with it for a couple more minutes. And it's also, I love that before we turn the microphones on, you said something that I think every Canadian would hate you for a little bit, which is that I said, you're happy to be back in Canada. And you said, yeah, I miss the weather.
I know. Isn't that a strange thing to say? But I miss many things about Canada. I miss, maybe I wouldn't miss the 15th storm of the season, but I miss the first storm of the season.
Yeah, it is nice. It does.
Yeah.
It's like a marking. It's a demarcation of life.
Yeah, it's like a rite of passage.
Speaking of Canada, congrats on the Junos.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much.
Feeling good about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it, but I'm really happy with that album. And it's made with my own mentor, Reinbert DeLeo, the pianist and conductor. So I'm just happy that it's getting recognition anywhere. It's a really, really beautiful kind of labor of love.
More recognition, too. I mean, you picked up the prestigious Leonie Zoning, is that how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
Leonie Zoning Music Prize.
Mm-hmm.
Given out to one artist every year, putting you in a peer group with the likes of Igor Stravinsky, Leonard Bernstein, Janet Baker, Miles Davis,
I know.
How does that possibly feel?
Well, the funny thing was when they told me about the prize, I was in Denmark. They told me a while ahead, so I knew. But they didn't say you're getting this prize. They handed me an envelope and said, "Would you please read this?" And I said, "Oh, do you want me to read it now?" I didn't know what it was. And then I read this. I scanned this letter very quickly. I was tired. I just finished a rehearsal, and I thought they were asking me to be on the jury for the prize. And then I read
very
it.
Canadian, by the way.
And then I read it further, and no, I was like, "You're giving me the prize?" I was really very moved and really honored. So, and I have projects, and I have this Young Artist Initiative. So I'm looking for funding for things. So I felt like this was so serendipitous, that it happened.
I want to talk about that Young Artist Project in just a little while. But first, I want to go back to you. By the way, I love the further this interview's been going, me being from St. John's, you being from Waverly, right? Waverly, Nova Scotia. I feel like our R's are getting harder.
I don't... I think I don't have any accent when I'm in Europe. But when I come back to Canada, the first thing I noticed, because I had a concert in New York on Friday, and then I flew on Saturday morning to Toronto because I had a rehearsal Saturday afternoon. And I was like, everybody's speaking Canadian.
Oh, my God.
It was so refreshing.
But even then, I heard you say the word Denmark.
Oh, right.
Like you didn't do the Ontario, Denmark. So when did you discover that you could sing? When did that happen?
Well, actually, I didn't discover it. I think my mother discovered it. And my mom used to sing with me and my twin and my sister, who was just 14 months older than us, as babies. And she would sit with us at the piano and teach us melodies. And I think, we could sing melodies before we could actually speak
what was
real
she singing
words.
You?
Oh, simple songs, Christmas carols and children's songs. And I have such a strong memory of when we would go to bed at night that my mom would play the piano downstairs. It was like her way of relaxing. And she would play the piano version of Handel's Water Music. And I remember hearing those dum, 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 deep, dum, da, dum, bum, bum, ba. So my memories are very, very far, far back.
Mm-hmm. And so she found out you could sing and sing. She obviously recognized you had a gift for melody. And
yes, but I think also she awakened in us because do we really know anyone that hates music? It's quite rare. So what she was doing was cultivating our joy in music, and so then we asked, could we have piano lessons, or could we study oboe or cello or whatever we were interested in, and eventually singing lessons. Prior to that, singing in choirs and fantastic school music teachers. So the thing was, we were in a small community, and We didn't have public transport to get out of town. We didn't have the internet. There were a couple channels on TV, so you had your hobbies and you had your sports or music or whatever it was. And when you had a special teacher, that really grew in entire communities.
I mean, are you ever speaking to some of your contemporaries, your peers, who might say like, "Oh yes, I grew up in New York, and my father was the conductor of this and that," or like, "Oh yeah, I grew up in Vienna, and my uncle was Mozart." Are you?
Maybe my great uncle.
Yeah, maybe so.
I don't know. Perhaps that happens, but I think when all these years that I've been in Europe, many of the interviews I do over there, they're just fascinated that I come from this place, this small place, and I say to them, yes, but discipline is discipline. I mean, if you are studying to do anything and you learn how to work hard and you learn how to be disciplined in your pursuit of the talent. I mean, we all know that saying, right? Hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. And I think you can also have a talent for working hard. But that certainly can be encouraged and developed by all of our teachers.
So we did some research.
Yeah.
I want you to take a listen to this.
Now they took all the trees, put them in a tree museum. And they charged all the people $1.50 just to see 'em. I said, don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
There's the...
her voice, it's so pure. I'm sure she had perfect pitch, I'm sure. It's just so pure. My brother just bought me the Mingus album, the record. I haven't played it yet, but he bought it for me when I was in the States a couple weeks ago.
What did Joni mean to you growing up?
Well, it was actually later that I got really into her, like in adulthood. It wasn't that I was listening to her so much. I mean, we all knew the famous songs, but it was a couple of things. Of course, the purity of her singing voice, the way she used her voice however she wanted and needed to use it. It was like she wasn't attached to a particular sound. And as her sound changed over the years, as her voice got lower from age and probably smoking and overuse perhaps, she still... she just sang from the soul, so beautifully. And I also loved how versatile she was, what a phenomenal musician she was to go her own way. I mean, what she did with this Mingus album is extraordinary. And the chords that she developed, the originality, the text, and then I remember at one point in an interview she said something about it wasn't so important to her that other people would sing her songs. It was more important to her that people would find inspiration in her songs to make their own songs. And I thought, yeah, that resonated very deeply with me because I thought, yeah, we're not trying to inspire anyone to do the same thing as us. We're hoping that we awaken that creativity in others that they can then access, that they can have the courage to access.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Barbara Hannigan, much acclaimed Grammy Award-winning soprano and conductor. She's performing in Toronto this week. She's up for a Juno next month. We're talking a little bit about her early career in music. I want to play you another clip right now with my fingers crossed. So that's my guest, Barbara Hannigan, performing Ligeti's Mysteries of the Macabre. So when you were in studies, you heard composers like Ligeti, like Mahler. What was going through your head?
Well, I was interested in all music because kind of everything was new for me, whether it was Mahler or even certain Beethoven symphonies I'd never heard, or like really modern composers like Ligeti. I was just curious, and I really loved sound. And so when I came to Toronto when I was age 17, I went to Etobicoke School of the Arts for my last year of high school. And that was just, I was like a kid in a candy shop, I was in the theater department, I was in the music department, I was trying to learn how to dance, I was learning how to do orchestral arrangements. It was phenomenal, and then I went to U of T and I studied with Mary Morrison there. And again, Mary would say to me, she told me, go to concerts and go to the library. And guess what? I followed her advice. I spent hours and hours and hours in the library looking at different scores of music, learning about music in that way. And I went to concerts every night of the week, you know. And not just concerts with singers, but chamber music concerts, dance concerts, modern music, symphony concerts, theater pieces, you know, anything. I was just curious. The scene in Toronto was so vibrant. And I was hungry. And I'm still like that. I'm just still a very, very curious person in the creative arts.
So then when you leave U of T, you try to make it as a professional singer. So tell me a little bit about what that was like.
Well, when I left U of T, I was still doing some more training programs.
Yeah.
I studied in Banff. I studied in Orford. I went to England for a year. I went to Holland for a couple of years. Came back to Toronto, studied even a bit more while I was gigging in other places.
Was the goal to try and be a singer? Was the goal to be...
Yeah. I wanted to be a classical singer, but I wanted to focus on contemporary music. And that's what I did. And I eventually settled in Holland and lived there for quite a long time. And now I live in Paris. And so the singing was really, I mean, I was still doing some early music, but a lot of the stuff I was doing was like orchestral contemporary pieces. And I really liked working with living composers and being a channel for them and singing their operas. And then things changed a little bit, and I started moving back in time. So I started singing like earlier pieces, earlier 20th century works, and sometimes occasionally Debussy or Mozart. And then in 2011, the conducting started.
I want to get into that, the conducting, but I find it interesting you say, you know, I was really interested in being a living conduit for living composers, and then you went to early music. But I also read about you that you can often feel like if you don't like what you're singing, you really don't want to sing it.
Yeah, I'm very particular, and I'm lucky that I can be particular, because I always say to younger singers, you know, when you're young, take every gig you can get, because work always leads to more work. But when you get to my ripe old age, I'm in a luxury position that I can be very picky. And the reason I'm picky is because I serve music well that I have an affinity, for which I have an affinity. And if I don't connect to it, that reads. The audience can tell. And it's like eating a food that I don't like.
Right.
It has calories, it will still fulfill some purpose, but I don't enjoy it.
And is it the same impulse? Like, I think we all know kind of naturally if we don't like a food. is when you say, like, if I don't enjoy a piece of music,
I know immediately. I can already tell usually.
Gut.
Yeah, it's a gut feeling. I can tell just mostly by looking at the score. It's a combination of the text and the architecture of the score and the way the lines move. I can feel it quite quickly if I want to go further into really learning the piece or not. It's like electricity.
So let's go to the conducting, because what I find interesting about the conducting is that, you know, for being a seasoned performer like you are, I read that you used to get very nervous before you would go on stage.
I still get nervous.
You still to this day?
Oh, yeah. I was nervous for rehearsal today. I'm nervous every day, but I think that's good. It's a sign of respect, you know, for your colleagues and for the music and for the audience. I think I'm fine with it now. I mean, it's not debilitating.
Was it?
There are a few occasions. There was one audition I did in Holland, I remember, for the St. Matthew Passion, and I was so scared I couldn't even see in front of me anymore. I mean, and I was singing, but I thought I was going to faint.
Oh, my.
Yeah, but it happens, you know, and it was a mindset, and that's kind of why I started really working on mental focus and discipline in a way that wasn't directly related to music. I started working with sports people and an Olympic coach and all kinds of different influences to help me have a mental focus and discipline so that I could serve the music I'm so passionate about.
What did you learn? I mean, I know you learned so much, it's hard to boil it down, but I'm so curious as what like an Olympic coach, what these sports people could teach you.
Well, the coach I work with, she comes from tennis. And I mean, if you watch Federer at the beginning of his career, he couldn't control his temper. I mean, he was very open about that. And then he started to become much more focused. He was working with a mental coach, right? He started to become much more focused, and one of the things that he said, which I really admire, is that most of the time when he's playing, he's not playing against his opponent. He's playing against himself, because he has certain goals that he wants to meet in these games. And those goals may not always be winning. You know, there are certain matches, of course he wants to win, but he has things that he's working on, new techniques and so on. And that resonated very deeply for me, because I'm the same way. I set certain goals for a rehearsal or for a performance or even for a practice session. And when I'm very clear about my intention, I get much better work done, but my heart kind of responds to that. And so my focus is much stronger.
So lead me to the conducting.
Right.
I've read that the conducting was also a way for you to deal with some of these things.
Well, the conducting changed things for me in a way, because you know, I didn't set out to have a career change to be a conductor. I simply agreed to a couple of gigs in 2011 to test the waters as to whether this was something that I wanted to do, because it had been, you know, certain people I respect and who had been mentoring me had been saying to me for quite a while, you know, you have the conductor quality in you, or you sing like a conductor. I was like, what's that
What does
mean?
that mean?
I don't know, because most conductors don't sing very well.
Right.
Not as good
Sorry,
as me.
conductors listening right now. Too bad.
But yeah, and so I explored it for a couple of engagements, and it had quite it was like there was a catalytic effect, and it immediately led to orchestras and musicians inviting me to come and create special programs with them where I would sing and conduct. And
I guess my question is, like, when you sing and conduct, which wasn't something that I really had heard of before I heard of you, if you were having anxiety about singing, I would think that the motion of conducting or the...
It's not the motion, it's the care. Because when you are conducting, when I am conducting, I have this feeling of a parental responsibility. It's very strange because I'm not a parent, but that's the word that immediately came to me with the debut. I was like, this is a parental care feeling. I want to make sure not only is everyone okay, but can they be their best? And it was such a strange feeling towards this group of 85 people. I want them to be at their best. I want them to all, you know, come to their highest level together.
And does that then take the pressure off you?
Well, it takes the focus off my nerves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, the pressure's not off. I mean, I guess there's a lot of pressure.
I think I mean the internal pressure.
Yeah. And so I find that I forget a little bit about how scared I could possibly be.
Note to any performers out there, if you're having a hard time getting nervous, start conducting. Take a listen to this.
Storm out, I had to lock my door. Somehow I couldn't warm up to warm the floor. What was it that controlled me? What kept my love life lean? My intuition told me.
That's my guest, Barbara Hannigan, performing Gershwin's Girl Crazy Suite, a piece from her Grammy Award-winning album, Crazy Girl Crazy, a piece she'll be performing in Toronto tonight and tomorrow. Sometimes I feel like it's a part of the torture I do to artists, was make them sit in silence and listen to their own music for 20 seconds.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't help but smile when I listen to this. I remember the recording session. You know, I didn't go to a booth and record the vocals separately. I was conducting the orchestra and singing to them at the same time. I had a microphone taped to the middle of my forehead. I had another mic in front of me and mics on the sides, and then they all had their mics. And so the pressure was just phenomenal and so fun. And this is with my Dutch orchestra, Ludwig, who I adore. And, you know, it was just...
It just occurred to me that like when you make a record, and if you're listening to this and you haven't made a record before, oftentimes, if you make a mistake, you'll stop and start the track all over again. Sometimes you'll keep going and fix it in post. But I'm thinking in this case, you have to be so ready as both a conductor and as a singer, two elements of the performance that could easily, if you don't mind me saying, make mistakes.
Even more room for error.
Yeah.
I think and when we recorded this, I think mostly we did it in full takes, the entire suite. It's about 13 minutes. And we would run the whole piece and then run it again. And then I remember even at the end, we did one last, we were exhausted. And then they said, oh, come on, just do one more take for fun. And so we did one last take for fun, and somebody filmed it. And everyone's just smiling and singing. And the orchestra was they're Dutch and they're very straightforward. And so if someone made a mistake, they were very open about it. They didn't hide it and then think that we'd have to clean it up. They were very honest about it so that we all knew if somebody had made a mistake, they'd note it so that we could fix it in the next take. So it was great. It was very, very loving.
Here's the reason, if I haven't been transparent enough, of why we kind of started in Waverly, and then why we went to U of T, and then why we went to learning to sing and conduct at the same time, is because I'm curious as to what given this, I will say, unique experience that you've had. It's not a typical classical musician story of the classical musicians I've spoken to. You have this new initiative, the Equilibrium Young Artists, to help you musicians starting out in the industry. So, given that your own experience is so strange in so many ways, what were you hoping to give young musicians?
Well, I started Equilibrium. Basically, we've had our first season this year. I wanted to help my younger colleagues. And I decided to create a mentoring initiative for young professionals who are in the first substantial phase of their career, who have finished all their training programs. So they're done their masters, they're done their young artist program or, apprenticeship at an opera company like the COC has, for example, the
Canadian
Atelier.
Company, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wanted something to help them through, now you're a professional, because it's a lonely time. And I think anyone listening today, in any field, I was talking to doctors and they were saying how difficult it is those first 7 or 8 years. All of a sudden, nobody's making your schedule anymore. You're not a resident anymore. You are a doctor and you're alone. And I think on the one hand, it's very important to accept that we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. But how can someone at 27 years old, all of a sudden, the transition between, June and September, all of a sudden they're completely ready? It's impossible. So how can we help? And so what I did was I created this mentoring initiative. I opened it up for auditions internationally. I had 350 applicants from 39 countries. And I screened everything, all the videos, all the letters, everything. And then I auditioned 125 live, and then we started with 2 different projects this season all over Europe with 3 different orchestras, actually 4 different orchestras. And we have these special workshops where we have like anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10-day workshops where we're not just working on rehearsing the music. We have this top performance coach, Jackie Reardon, who has worked with Olympic and top professional and amateur athletes, coming in every single day working with us. All of a sudden, we stop rehearsing a Stravinsky or Mozart, and we're doing exercises with a tennis ball.
Right. Right.
And at the end of the week, or at the end of the 10 days, we're all changed. We're working, in a very specific, disciplined way that we then carry to all of our other workplaces to infect others with this wonderful focus,
Well, so then give me, just to close things out, give me something from that, because I was in a restaurant over the weekend and someone came up to me and said, hey, I'm an aspiring filmmaker, I listen to Q. I have people write me on Instagram, hey, I'm an aspiring musician, I listen to Q. So I feel like there's a lot of these people listening to you right now, and I want to know, given that you've had such a unique trajectory, which is I think not a bad way of putting it, what would you say to them?
Personal connections.
What do you mean?
Well, people are writing to you on Instagram, right? We have all this social media right now. We post on Facebook. We respond to someone's tweet. I started out before that, and I still feel a very deep value of a face-to-face interview, of a face-to-face cup of coffee, of a real telephone conversation, if that's as close as you can get, of a handwritten letter, you know.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find that, you know, yesterday we had, or this week we had auditions for the Toronto Symphony, because the Toronto Symphony is now going to collaborate with Equilibrium. And out of about 70 applicants, we chose 23 fantastic young Canadian professional singers to audition for the Mozart Requiem that will be conducted with by Surrender Davis next season. And part of the auditions were these mentoring sessions. And the kinds of questions they asked me, we were talking about, and it was amazing because I'd never met most of these people before. We were talking about, how do you deal with loneliness on the road? How do you deal with singing when you're grieving and still perform? You know, and these are relevant things for every profession. How do we continue on our path when we're going through the rough times? The easy times are easy. How do we find mentors? You know, how do we be mentors? How can we help others? What kind of ways do we use language? You know, one young singer, she was talking about her skill as a composer and how she also is composing, and she said in the session, she said, well, I'm not really a composer, but sometimes I compose, but they're probably not very good. But my question was, do you think it's helpful for me to do that? And I said, well, it's so interesting because you said 3 negative things about something that you actually love to do.
Right, right.
I said, you'd never say that about a friend, right? So, and I very specifically pointed out where she had used negative language and how could she possibly turn that around to represent that she is passionate about composing and that it is something that feeds her not only as a human being, but also as a musician, even though her biggest passion may be singing. So, you know, I think mentoring in every field is extremely important, and I'm very, very happy that I now have this initiative that's really up and running and that is really working on an international level.
Well, it was so nice to talk to you in person.
Thank you.
Face to face.
Really happy to be here.
Not
Thank
even a
you
cup of
so
coffee,
much.
but we got to see each other, not talk
Yeah.
over the line from Paris.
It's great.